Who is in charge of your mind? A Buddhist Guide to Dethinking. Dogen had a nice definition for meditation, which is dethinking your thinking. You're trying to take apart the concepts that you carry around with you, especially the ones that are causing you to suffer. And a lot of these concepts you believe in very firmly. They're what the Thai Ajahns called samad, from the Pali samadhi. They're the conventions by which we communicate with one another, make sense of our world around us, especially in the social sphere, through the agreements we have both within ourselves and with other people. The word red has a certain meaning. The word blue has another meaning, like dislike. All the concepts of language are things that we learn to agree on with one another, to use when we deal with one another. We also carry a lot of those concepts inside. We have lots of beliefs about ourselves, about how we run things inside our mind, sometimes skillful, sometimes not, particularly if you come from an unhealthy environment, which a lot of America is now. Many of the concepts you bring inside for dealing with your own thoughts, figuring out what's going on inside, are actually harmful. So you want to learn how to de-think those thoughts. It's not a matter of just putting them aside. It's a matter of taking them apart, questioning them. At first, to do the proper questioning, you have to get the mind in a good place. That's why we practice concentration, so that you can de-think your thoughts not out of desperation or from neurotic dislike for them, but from a place of balanced well-being. You put the mind in a good place, and then, from there, you can gaze back at the ideas you've been carrying around and you can ask yourself with some objectivity, are those really helpful right now? Dethinking thinking. Even something as simple as the notion of facing forward, close your eyes. The body has a sense of forward and back, but why does the mind have to carry that in? We tend to think of the mind as being like the eyes that face forward. But what happens if you think of the mind just as being a radiance going out in all directions and all directions are equal? Then, of course, there are concepts about the breath. I don't know how many people have said, there's no way breath can go through your nerves. How does air go through nerves? Well, breath here isn't air. It's energy. And there are many layers of energy in the body. Our society doesn't encourage us to look at these layers of energy or provide us with any coherent way of thinking about them. So here is one way you can rethink your thinking. Think of your sense of the body here as just breath. Everything you know about the sense of your hands, your feet, your legs, your torso, your head. Just tell yourself that your first perception of these things is energy. Then, from that, the perception goes into the sense of being solid or warm or cold. So it's not like you're trying to push the breath through the solid parts. You're just allowing the breath to come first. Give it priority. And let those other things fall into the background because, after all, the breath is what allows you to sense these things to begin with. This becomes a useful way of dealing with pain. Pain tends to get glommed together with the earth element, your sense of solidity in the body. Of course, that makes the pain seem solid. So to get past that, you learn how to question the solidity of the pain. You experience the breath before you experience the pain. Think of it in that way. We have a subconscious tendency when there's a pain to allow the breath energy to flow up to the pain and then stop. Well, that makes it worse. We tighten up around the pain in our childish desire to put a boundary around it, to keep it from spreading, and then the energy can't go through. We feel that the pain is there first and the breath comes second. So reverse that. The breath is first, the pain is second. And the breath is something other than pain. It's a physical element, but pain is something else. It's that sharpness, that heightened sense of displeasure or discomfort. But once you untangle it from the solidity of the body, you begin to realize it's a lot more fluid and insubstantial than you thought before. Ajahn Chah has a nice analogy. He says it's like you're sitting in the one seat in the house, and all the other things that come have no place to sit down. They're there at your pleasure. They come and they go, but you're the one in the seat. You're in charge. Thinking of the breath this way puts you more in charge of what's going on in your sensation of the body. You were here first. The breath is here first. The pain is secondary. It's not the case that the pain has moved in and laid claim to it and pushed us out unless we allow ourselves to be pushed out and give the seat up to it. We were there first. The breath is there first. Once you can start taking apart your thoughts and perceptions about the body, you can do that with thoughts and perceptions about other things as well. A thought comes up and you can recognize it as a voice from someone in your family, someone in school, or somebody in the media. Or it's one of your old defilements. In other words, your identity in the past that wants to come back. That's why the Ajahns personify the defilements, because you gave them personality by assuming them as your identity. Learn to question that. When these things come in and say things, ask yourself, what if the opposite is true? And why do I have to believe those concepts anyhow? When I was in Thailand at Wada Sokaram, we'd have Dhamma talks every night. They had a rotating roster of monks. And out of the 14 monks on the roster, maybe 2 could give good Dhamma talks, and the rest were boring, not very insightful, not very helpful. So I made a game of it. Even though I could hear the talk, I was going to very definitely not understand it. It was just going to be sounds, sounds, sounds. A word would come, and I wouldn't connect it with the word before it, and I wouldn't connect that one with the word that came after. When you do that, you find that the mind can quiet down a lot faster. Well, you can try the same trick with your own thoughts. Just think of them as gibberish. Cut the connections between them. Think of them as a foreign language. You don't have to take on their concepts, because often when you take on their concepts, you take on their grammar too, which creates a kind of reality. Again, this is what they call samit in Thai. Conventions, supposings, agreed on meanings. It's interesting that the Thai word for convention also means a supposing. You suppose things into being. You make those agreements for useful purposes, but you don't have to agree with them all the time. You can say, for the time being, I'm just going to be here with the breath and I don't have to agree with any other thought that comes in, any other language that comes in. As soon as a thought appears, think of it dissolving away. Think of it exploding. Pains arise in the body. Think of them being dispersed. You're not clamping down on them because all too often that's what we do. A pain comes in and our instinctive reaction is, how can I make sure this doesn't spread? And so we tense up around it thinking that that's a way of keeping it from spreading. Of course, that actually creates extra pain. So instead of thinking of the pain as a thing, think of it as just these moments that come and go. They're whizzing past and they're going away from you. Instead of thinking that they're coming at you from the front, think of them as coming at you from behind. You've got the right to think of them in those terms. As soon as you realize that they're there, they're going away from you. That loosens up a lot of the tightness and tension, a lot of the sense of being burdened by these things, being attacked by these things, of being on the receiving end. You don't have to receive them. They're not guests. You're not obliged to be polite with them. You're sitting here with your eyes closed and you've got the one seat in the house. You don't have to have anything to do with anything else. See how many of your conventions and supposings and internal agreements you can put aside, at least for the time being. You can dethink them, flip them around, turn them inside out. Just think of them as being gibberish right now. The only thing that's real is your sense of awareness, very clearly here with the sensation of the breath, the sensation of energy here for the body. Eventually, you'll want to dethink that too, but not yet. Use that first to dethink other things. That way, the things that have long had a hold on the mind don't have a hold anymore because you're not holding on to them. This is like the Buddha's image of fire. Fire feeds on its fuel and clings to the fuel, and as a result, is stuck on its fuel. It's interesting that a lot of ancient cultures perceive fire as clinging. The I Ching talks about fire as clinging as well. And of course, it clings. Take a stick with a flaming end and try to shake the fire off the stick, and you'll see that the fire holds onto the stick no matter how much you swing it around. It clings, and as a result, it's trapped. And then, as they say in Pali, it gets freed when it goes out. It's freed because it lets go. How are you going to be free of your thoughts unless you learn how to let them go? You won't gain any freedom until you give them their freedom to go. You keep digging them up and hanging on to them, digging them up, hanging on to them. They present themselves and you immediately turn things into the type of reality that fits into your conventional, supposed, agreed-on notions of reality, and that places lots of limitations on you. So learn how to question those agreements. Say, I'll use those agreements when they're necessary. Use those supposings, those suppositions when they're necessary. But right now, they're not. Why carry them around? They'll come back when you need them. A lot of those things you don't need right now. All you have to do is be aware of the breath. It's all around you. It's bathing you. It's not the case that you're on one side of the breath, facing forward looking at the breath. It's all around you. So try to have an all-around awareness of this all-around element and see how that changes the dynamic inside. Dethinking thinking. There were some beavers raised in captivity. Their parents had been killed and they were very young when they were taken by the wildlife rescue people. As they got older and became adults, it came time to release them back into the wilderness. And the rescuers were concerned. Would they know how to build a dam? Would they know how to build a lodge? So they released them into a stream, and sure enough, very quickly, the first thing they thought about was building a dam, then a lodge. It was instinctive. In the same way, our minds are very instinctive about creating states of becoming. We create little worlds, and then we take on an identity in those worlds. As the worlds fall apart or our identity falls apart, we create new ones. We keep at it. This is how the mind occupies itself, how it uses its imagination to figure out what to do. But it's also why we suffer, because all those becomings are based on craving. As the Buddha said, wherever there's craving that leads to becoming, there's going to be suffering. So the purpose of the meditation is to learn how to unlearn that habit. This is why when the Buddha gives us instructions for concentration, which are actually in the description of right mindfulness, which tell how you do the concentration, there are two activities. One is to stay focused on one thing in and of itself, and the other is put aside greed and distress with reference to the world. This is going to require you to put aside all references to the world while you're sitting here. You want to be just awareness, breath, and that's going to be becoming enough. And sure enough, the mind will start creating little becomings, just like those beavers building dams, but you want to nip them in the bud. You have to see, what is it that goes into those becomings? The Buddha said that two of the aggregates are especially active in shaping the mind, or shaping these becomings, feelings and perceptions, and you want to learn how to deconstruct them. This is a really important part of the meditation. A world begins to form in the mind, and you have to destroy it. Now, doing that is engaging in craving for non-becoming, but you're going to find the right balance between craving for becoming and craving for non-becoming only by learning how to engage in both skillfully. For instance, your craving for becoming right is aimed at creating a state of concentration. Your craving for non-becoming has to be focused on doing away with everything that would lead to new concepts of the worlds, perceptions of the worlds. Any perception of the mind right now that tells you where you are in the world, who you are in the world. See if you can shred it. turn it inside out. Dogen has a word for this. He calls it dethinking thinking. And here you're engaged in deperception. The Thais have interesting insight into perception. Their word for perception, sanya, is also used for agreement or contract. When a perception forms in the mind, there's an agreement in the mind that this is going to mean that, and that's going to mean this. So you've got to learn how to undo the agreement. An image forms and you learn how not to recognize it. Something that would normally key you into another world, you say, nope, I don't recognize that. You could think of the breath breathing right through it. One of the Thai Ajahns like to use the image of a knife. A perception forms and you slash it. Another one forms, you slash it. Anything where any connection comes up, you slash right through it with a knife. You do that because you're changing your frame of reference. You need to change your frame of reference if you're going to see what's going on in the mind. If you allow your frame of reference to be the world, there are certain things that make sense in terms of the world, certain values, and they're not the values you want right now. If you adopt the world as your context, if you adopt that frame, the ways of the world make sense. But here, you want to make them not make sense right now. Look at them with new eyes. To turn inside out. That's why we stay with the breath in and of itself, the body in and of itself. Try to keep a low profile, fly under the radar. Don't let clouds of abstractions build up because they do turn into becomings. So stay close to the sensation of the breath. You'll realize, of course, that perceptions play a role in concentration too, in keeping you with the breath in and of itself. How you perceive the breath will have a huge impact on how you experience it. In other words, the way you label it, the pictures you have in your mind about the breath, will have a huge impact on how the breath actually flows. So you want to experiment to make sure that this alternative frame is interesting, engaging, a very pleasurable place to be. So you try out different perceptions of the breath. You can try Ajahn Lee's, the perceptions he recommends in Method 2. Or you can try the perceptions he recommends in some of his Dhamma talks. He's got a wide range of perceptions to suggest. He talks about breath sensations that go up, breath sensations that go down, those that spin in place, those that go back and forth. See if these perceptions help. You could think of the breath coming in the soles of the feet and going up through the spine. Or you can think of it starting at the base of the skull and going down the spine. One perception I've found helpful is of not having to drag the breath through the body. Tell yourself that as soon as you start breathing in, the breath has already gone throughout the whole body, throughout the whole nervous system. It's that fast. That's subtle. Just hold that perception in mind and see what happens. The point here is that we're not trying to get after the most objective perception of the breath, because it turns out there are lots of different valid ways you can perceive it. The objectivity we're looking for is the objectivity of cause and effect. In other words, you try this perception, you get those results. You try another perception, you get different results. Which is better? Because a lot of insight, as I've been saying many times, is a value judgment as to what's worth doing. So which perceptions are worth doing? If you run into a perception that's not worth doing, you shred it. You deperceive it, question it, turn it inside out. And you can test this most effectively when you don't get into the framework of the world. As soon as you start thinking about the world, there are the duties that have to be done out there, things you have to worry about, things that are important in the context of the world. But right now, we're trying to establish a different type of importance, where the duties of the world would only interfere. So if the mind wanders back to the world, try to shred those perceptions. Work on the perceptions that help you stay grounded here in the breath in and of itself, making this your framework. That's when you get to see perceptions in and of themselves, feelings in and of themselves, simply as they're directly experienced, simply as you engage in them. When we say that we experience these things, we experience them through doing them. It's not that we're simply on the receiving end. The Buddha's analysis of the aggregates, remember that? For the sake of feelingness, for the sake of perceptionhood, you fabricate a feeling, you fabricate a perception. In other words, there's a raw material there from your past karma, and you turn it into actual feelings, actual perceptions, for the sake of having feelings and perceptions you can use. There's an intentional element there, so learn how to use that intentional element well, to experiment. This, again, is not to get to the objectivity of the best perception of the breath or the truest perception of the breath, but to the objectivity of cause and effect. This perception has that effect. That perception has this effect. That's what you want to see. After a while, as you get the mind into concentration, you'll be dealing with perceptions in every level up through the dimension of nothingness as a perception attainment. So you have to know perceptions well. And they're useful not only for concentration, they're also useful for discernment. Look at what the Ajahns say about their practice. When you're working with pain, the big issue is perception. When you're working with lust or pride around the body and trying to see the unattractiveness of the body, the issue is the perception. Why is it that you can go from perceiving the body as unattractive to being attractive very quickly? Who hijacked the perceptions? So, of all the aggregates, perception seems to be the most central one in the teachings of the Forest Ajahns. And you can make it central in your own practice by learning how to play with it, as the mind is very much shaped by the labels it applies to things. Be very careful about which perceptions you can ride with as you try to stay focused on the breath in and of itself, and which perceptions you have to de-perceive, to take apart, to turn inside out. This is something you learn through trial and error, through experimenting to the point where you get to trial and success. You gain your range of perceptions that help the mind to settle down, that help you gain insight, and you've mastered the skills of taking apart any perceptions that are unhelpful or actually get in the way. That's when you really can start counteracting that tendency to keep building dams and lodges, to create little worlds and then go traveling in them, willy-nilly. You learn how to create a world here around the breath and inhabit this world for the time being, while you learn how to take apart everything else. So, as we de-perceive, we're deconstructing and decontextualizing as well. As I said, certain values make sense in the context of the world, but when you see them simply as mental events in and of themselves, they don't make sense anymore. When you see that, you begin to see the way by which you can get yourself free from them.